What a week. What a week it's been. I don't know about your week, it's been a week for me. I don't know if you listen to the news, we got all these things happening with the name of Brady Street being renamed or sort of renamed, and we've got all kinds of political cowardice and things happening, and attempts at statesmanship and all of that. But this week I've been in the question of thinking about social networking. Social networking. Is it working? Or is it, maybe we should call it social not working? We often hear it said that we are more connected now than we've ever been at any time in human history. But I'm wondering, how much is social media connecting us and how much is it disconnecting us? In my life, social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Skype, Google, they've reconnected me with people from way back in my life that I never thought that I would ever be back in relationship with again. And now in some cases I wish that hadn't happened, but mostly it's been fun to see pictures of people I went to high school with and grade school with, see their children, see their spouses, see their homes. I'll tell you though, it's a different world that our children and our grandchildren are growing up in. This summer when my family was on vacation in the mountains of Vermont, every once in a while my son would get on to his laptop and he'd be talking and playing games with another friend of his from Tulsa who happened to be in Mexico visiting his grandparents. These two Tulsa boys hanging out online, playing games together from across the world. Sometimes he'll be playing games with other kids from England or other countries who he's never met before. That's the other side of social media, that these technologies can also be disconnecting and dangerous because he doesn't really know if this is another 12-year-old from England or some strange 45-year-old from Okmulgee. So we have to teach our children about that. I have to admit that there have been times when my wife has found the need to passionately express her dissatisfaction with my use of technology. Did I say that okay? That'd be when I was texting at the dinner table, for example, which is not a good idea, I've learned. It starts with just a quick one-word text for some urgent message that someone has, and then pretty soon I'm in this long texting conversation at the table until someone says, "Are you having dinner with us or not?" Which I learned is a rhetorical question. Or in the middle of some great family outing, I decide to post a picture of what's happening on Facebook. There's something inside me that's enjoying the moment so much that I just want to share it with everyone who knows me on Facebook. I want to say, look at me and my family in this beautiful place, having this wonderful picnic. Until someone says, "Dad, are you hanging out with us here, or are you with some folks on your phone there?" And there goes our idyllic family outing. The caption on Facebook should read, "Here's a picture of the amazing family picnic I was having until I decided to post a picture on Facebook, and it all went downhill after that." Now, I imagine I'm not the only, from the laughter, I imagine I'm not the only one who has some trouble sometimes discerning how to use a new technology in a way that is connecting versus disconnecting. Some of us need a technology etiquette coach. Amen to that, right? We need a Miss Manners for technology. And I am clearly not the person for that job. But what I do know is something about what does it take to keep social networks of people in a community healthy and strong and positive. So this morning I want to talk about the glue that connects us all together. The glue is love. But what is love, really? According to Dr. Itzhak Adizes, who's a world-renowned consultant and author, someone who I've learned a lot from over the years. He says, love is total integration and unity and harmony. For example, think of those moments when you are so immersed in what you're doing that you forget everything around you. This is inspiration in spirit. When we are in love with what we're doing, we are united with the Spirit, with God. Because God is love. So when we love what we're doing, we are inspired. When we are inspired, we are integrated with our essence, which is God, which is love. If God is love, and love is the experience of total integration, then how can we express love, which is the definition of following the will of God? Expressing love is the definition of following the will of God. Dr. Adizes says it's mutual respect and mutual trust. That's the formula. We can't be integrated with something or someone that we don't respect or trust. There's no love without trust and respect. But what is respect? He takes the definition from the philosopher Immanuel Kant, who says respect is to recognize the undeniable right of another person to think differently. The undeniable right of another person to think and believe differently. Because if we can't accept other people's ability to think and believe differently, then we are denying that person's undeniable right to be who they are. So keep this in mind. Wherever there's difference, there's growth. Where difference is encouraged and respected, there's synergy. And where difference is feared and forbidden, it's an intellectual wasteland. Fear of difference is the breeding ground for fundamentalism and authoritarianism. And so what's trust? According to Dr. Adizes, trust means that we know that the other person has our interest at heart. That they're going to watch our back, and if it's mutual, we're going to watch their back. Mutual trust means that we have common interest, and we know it, and we protect it for one another. One of my favorite images of Dr. Adizes is used to demonstrate this point is a hand with its fingers placed together. Have you seen that before? This is a symbol in all the religions of the world. We see it with Catholic statues of Catholic saints and pictures doing a blessing. We see it of Hindu gods and goddesses. We see Buddha statues all over with their fingers together like this, blessing people. The Islamic religious art in the Muslim world, lots of pictures of hands with Arabic writing on them, blessing. A hand with fingers together in most cultures and religions symbolizes a blessing. What is it? What is it? It's difference together. Every finger on the hand has a different role, a different purpose. It looks different, it's shaped differently, but they work together as a unified whole. Difference together is a blessing, and where difference is valued and comes together and finds unity of purpose, there is a blessing. Now in the Middle East, when you want to curse someone, you know what they do? They go like this. That's how you curse people in the Middle East. You spread the fingers of your palm apart. That's a curse. Difference spread apart, not united, is a curse. Now, since we're talking about social networks, and we're saying that God is love, and therefore expressions of love is to express love is to follow the will of God. Let's talk about what it means to express love. Dr. Adizes says, respect your fellow human beings and appreciate their differences, and at the same time, despite their differences, protect their interests. What a different world we'd be living in if that's how people thought. Why do we do that? Because, in fact, we are all one, joined in a mutual garment of destiny with nature, with one another, and with all life. And even though nothing and no one are identical, we can still be together and we can still see an underlying unity with all life and all people. There's a wonderful passage about this in the Christian scriptures in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Corinthians, that whole book is really a letter written by the Apostle Paul to the early Christian communities in Corinth. It was a diverse community, if you know anything about it. It was about the fifth decade after the death of Jesus. And at the time he wrote the letter, there was division and conflict in that community. So in the letter, he compares community with a single body. Let me read part of chapter 12 from 1 Corinthians. Just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all of its many parts form one body. Now, if the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to this body, it would not for that reason stop being a part of the body. We cannot say we're not one with, just because we say it doesn't make it true. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If we were all alike, if we all thought alike, acted alike, did things the same, if the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? If we were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, Paul writes, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I do not need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I do not need you. There should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. Watch each other's backs. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. You ever had a toothache? The whole body has a toothache. You know, your finger, you have a hangnail or something that's really hurting. The whole body feels it. He finishes this segment by saying, now you are the body of Christ and each one of you is part of it. In other words, you are the physical embodiment of God. You are the physical embodiment of love, and each of you has an important role to play. Now, in these exquisite verses, Paul outlines one of the greatest truths, not just about the church, but about the ecosystem and about every community and system in life and life itself. We are truly one and completely interdependent. The glue that keeps our unity together is love. What is love? What does love require of us? Love requires of us mutual respect and mutual trust. Dr. Adizes reminds us that a businessman who goes to church every week but is polluting the earth and exploiting his workers, is he serving God? No. What about the one who does not go to church and is an atheist, but who helps the needy and cares for the earth? He's serving God, so to speak, even though he doesn't call it that. In Dr. Adizes' language, love is the code of the operating system that operates the world. Love is the code. We've just cracked the code. The world works when there's mutual trust and respect. So without these things, life breaks down pretty quickly into violence and destruction. Lack of mutual trust and respect cuts the cord. And that leads to environmental collapse. It leads to personal problems. Without trust and respect, the world descends into chaos. And we don't have to look very far to see chaos in our world. Here in the United States, in Egypt, you don't have to go very far to see the chaos in Israel, lack of mutual trust and respect. So to come back to my original question, is social networking and technology helping us build mutual trust and respect? One thing's for sure, we have more information than any people have ever had in history. Keep in mind that for most of recorded time, a preacher could tell his congregation that their religion and their scripture is the one and only right and true religion that there is, and that all others are wrong and bad and maybe even evil. But today, people can read about every religion with the click of a mouse. And they can communicate with people from many cultures and religions, and do all the time. And this has the potential to dispel ignorance and build trust for respect for differences, like never before in human history. But people can also use a computer to make a pressure cooker bomb and bomb a marathon, or recruit people into a terrorist cell. So technology can connect and destroy. So it's up to us. It's up to us to figure out how can we use technology to help build trust and respect in our relationships and in our world. And I realize it's a little heady and a little technical today. I just wanted to get this idea out, but let's go back and take a second to apply this to some of our everyday circumstances. One example that I love from Dr. Deese's work is he says, when's a marriage over? When the couple signs the divorce papers? No. The marriage is over when there's no longer mutual trust and respect, and there's no hope that it can ever be established again. Whether it's official or not, the marriage is over. It's the same with a business team. It's the same with family members. Mutual trust and respect is the glue. When a parent dies, I've noticed some siblings deal with it really well, and some do not. I see intense conflict and separation among siblings when their parents finally die. What's the difference between those who deal with it well and those who don't? It's mutual trust and respect between the siblings. I want to say to every adult who has adult children that you need to do whatever you can to help them learn to be respectful and trusting of one another now before you die. Because the consequences are great, and the wreckage in their lives for not having those connections. And I want to tell you, if your parents are still around and you have yet to go through that transition in life, reach out and try to establish those relationships with your siblings. It's that important. This also applies on a city level. So family, but also city. Let's talk about what's been happening in Tulsa this week and this summer. The big conversation is about the renaming of a street. Does anyone remember? What street are we renaming? Did you hear it got renamed? What's it in the new name? That's different. So for those of you who are not from Tulsa, let me say what I'm talking about. This year, it became widely known, or widely publicized anyway, in the Tulsa community that Tate Brady, one of the founders of the city, was an admitted Ku Klux Klan member. Now, one of the most popular, one of the up-and-coming and most talked-about districts of our city right now is named after him. And so a proposal was made to our city council by the counselor who represents the historically and predominantly African-American district of Tulsa to change the name of Brady Street. He said, we don't want to have this glorification and honoring of somebody who, my constituents see killed our people and was a real racist who had damaging effects in real lives in this community. We'd like to see the name changed. And he put a proposal before the city council. And like most issues that have an overt racial component, people in the community became polarized. And in this polarized atmosphere, there's no sense of mutual interest and very little respect of differences of opinion. So one side wants the name changed and sees the resistance to changing it as one more example of how African Americans in this community and this city are not valued and respected as equals. Now the other side sees changing the name of the street as a form of revisionist history making that sets a bad example and a bad precedent and does not solve any real or substantial underlying concerns within our community, so it's a waste of time and it's a waste of money. Now, mutual respect would mean that each side would be able to appreciate that the other side has a valid and significant perspective that deserves fair consideration, that there is room for some dialogue. They try to then find common interest. What is our common interest? In this case, our common interest is the good of the city of Tulsa and the strengthening of relationships between our citizens. And in particular, ensuring a sense of positive enfranchisement among our African American community. Now, I'll tell you a little bit more about the solution that they chose in just a second. But first, I want to say something about every relationship. There's something that Robert Bly, the poet, calls the third body. In a marriage, there are three. There are two spouses and the third body, the marriage itself. When we're in conflict, nobody really wins except the third body. It's either strengthened or weakened by the conflict that has happened when it's all over. So if it's something as simple as what color we're going to paint the living room, you might get the color you want and think you won, but it depends on the wreckage to the third body that it cost to get your way. I often tell couples when I do premarital counseling, nobody wins in a marriage, only the third body. You need to tend to the third body of your marriage. And all successful marriages and those that last are couples who know that and who tend to the third body of their relationship. Now, this idea of the third body is the perfect metaphor for mutual trust. I need that Miss Manners to come and tell somebody to put their phone on vibrate. In the Brady Street conflict, one side could win, so to speak, but with a name change. And the other side could win with no name change. There could be a winner. But what about the third body? Which is, in this case, the city of Tulsa and the quality of race relations in the city of Tulsa. The solution that the counselors came up with this week was to name the street after a Civil War photographer who has no connections to Tulsa. But he has the last name of Brady. So they don't have to change any of the street signs or the name of the district or any of that. It's a compromise that technically changes the name while practically keeping it the same. The editors of the Tulsa World newspaper said of this outcome yesterday in an editorial, "It solves little, it satisfies practically no one, and has a strong odor of absurdity." I would agree. Let's look at how the potential outcomes could have affirmed or denied mutual trust and respect. If the city council would have voted not to change the name, I can imagine that many in the African American community and those in the wider community that were arguing for this would have felt it reinforced a decades-old sense of disenfranchisement from the larger Tulsa community if the vote was no. It would have been one more in a long line of slights and rebukes that have left many black Tulsans convinced that Tulsa continues to be a city where racism still dominates the government and civic life. And that would be, just in case you're not tracking with me, the exact opposite of mutual trust and respect. On the other hand, a yes vote to change the name to something besides Brady would have been at least a small sign to the African American community that the city council at least is willing to listen to some of the concerns of African American leaders about what would make this city more welcoming and more mutual. In other words, it would have communicated respect for the opinions of some African Americans even when those opinions are not shared by all Tulsans, which is the definition of respect. And that would be a small victory. Not a huge victory. It wasn't going to change the world, but it would have sent a message a positive message of respect. As for trust, it could have bolstered some trust that the leaders in the city of Tulsa see the interests of the African American community or African Americans as important. However, based on the opinions that I've read in the newspaper lately, there would have also been a lot of Tulsans, presumably white, who would have felt that this was revisionist history, this was political correctness gone wild, and a big mistake, and a frivolous waste of money. And you may have that opinion. I respect your right, undeniable right, to hold such an opinion. But here's the thing. Even that vote to change the name would have continued the polarization, would have continued this sense of division within our community, because we have to look at the third body of race relations in Tulsa. And even a yes vote for change would have continued the divide. Now, if the decision had to be made under those two choices, where there's no really good solution that's going to bring our community together, it seems to me that the right thing to do is to change the name. Because anything that can help build even a little trust and respect is better than doing something that would further harm the trust and respect within the community. The compromise solution that the city councilors came up with was better than a no vote. So it's got that going for it. But it did very little to build the actual trust and respect among Tulsans of different races and ethnicities. Instead of offering true leadership and making this an opportunity to unify our city or to make strides towards unifying our city, the council took the more cowardly approach of trying to do the least harm. Have you ever played a game not to win but to try not to lose? That's what they did. We can think of this controversy like this. Think of it as currency that we could invest. We could have invested. We still could invest, possibly. But of course, an investment carries with it risks. And yet, with investment, there's possibilities for real change. Instead of investing in greater trust and respect in our community, the council decided not to take the risk, and therefore we have minimal, if any, gains in the situation. I'd like to see our city make a real investment in race relations, because that's what the building of a social network is all about. As President Obama said in a speech recently, the political arena is not the best place for this dialogue. And that is so true. We need to have this dialogue in our churches, among our churches, across churches and schools, and throughout our community. Because it requires building real mutual respect, which means giving others the undeniable right to have a different opinion, and mutual trust, which means finding our common interests. We need to do it not because it's politically and economically smart. We need to do it because it's the will of God. By which I mean it is an expression of love, which is the operating principle of all life. Unity with diversity is a blessing. Diversity with separation is a curse. Imagine what the world would be like if more and more people learned to respect one another's differences and understood our mutual interest. Imagine if more and more people realized and could live it out this life as if we are all one, because we are, not only with one another, but with all of life. Let us learn to love and express love, because love is God, and our sole purpose on this earth is to learn to love. I love you. Amen.